Welcome to the channel. I am Gabriel Fast. I do claim to be the Wannabe Critic, and today we are going to be reviewing the new Tom Hanks movie, A Man Called Otto. Now, A Man Called Otto is directed by the same guy who did Stranger Than Fiction, Mark Robertson? Mark something? Mark Forster. There we go. For those of you who care, Rotten Tomatoes gave this movie a 66%, and IMDb gives it a 7.3 out of 10. But we're not going to use that to base our judgments off that, or my judgment. I just, that's something that people seem to care about, so I thought I would mention it. Anyways, A Man Called Otto, directed by Mark Forster. It's really kind of hard to talk about this movie without spoiling, key, bomb-dropping moments that kind of, unfold throughout the story, so I don't want to, talk about it too much. The general overview is that Otto, he's this grumpy guy. It's played by Tom Hanks. He lives in this neighborhood, and you can tell he's kind of shouldered the responsibility of, neighborhood watch. And this movie's even been marketed as, kind of a happy, fun-go-lucky, movie with Tom Hanks, and you're gonna fall in love with the grumpiest man in America. That's what it was, you can tell by the poster. It's interesting because, as I'm watching this movie, the first 20, 30 minutes, it did not grab me at all. I was like, man, this is literally just a movie for, the older generations to kind of, bash on the younger generations. And at first glance, this Otto guy, he seems like the very much stereotypical senior citizen, get off my lawn, that whole vibe. And basically the movie is about him having to deal with some new neighbors moving in. He lives by himself, he's widowed, you don't know, that whole story, and that's kind of where the movie picks up, and, you might be able to put some of the pieces together yourself on what happens next. But that's all I'm going to say about the plot. It's interesting because there's very much the old versus new themes. You can kind of tell the movie is really trying to get you in the perspective of how maybe the older generations view younger generations. It's interesting how nothing is really cut and dry now, but back in the old days, everyone kind of did everything the same way for the most part. There's a reason why jokes are made about older generations and how they did things back in the day, because it was very much so cut and dry. There wasn't really much room for nuance. The norms were very different, and many people in the older generations didn't really move on from that and haven't been able to move on. And this movie definitely kind of touches on a lot of those things. It was interesting. I went to the Alamo Drafthouse. It's my local theater here in Springfield. There was an older couple next to me and some older ladies in front of me that were just, having a grand old time. And it was funny because whenever Tom Hanks would do something that was he didn't want to get used to the new generation, the audience in my theater were audibly loud laughing. They really thought that was funny. And it wasn't. From my perspective, it's I don't find it funny. Not because I'm offended, but because I just don't really understand why that would be funny. So immediately, that's kind of why I got the vibe of oh, this is definitely going to be for the older generations. Throughout the experience, they would laugh, and there were multiple times in the film where I would hear the entire theater crying. Not just sniffles. I heard lots of sniffles, but that type of crying. It was just really surreal. That's never happened to me before in a theater where I was the youngest person. There's all these older people around me that are letting their emotions show. They don't have to worry about letting their emotions show. They just did it. And I don't know. I just thought that was it was just a very wholesome vibe. So I partly enjoyed the movie just because of the audience's reaction. And I don't know. It was just really interesting to be in that situation. I mentioned they would laugh and cry. The movie dramatizes, common stereotypical things that older generations hate, but it does it in a weird way. They're not really, this film isn't really acknowledging the entire audience. It's jokes why Chevy guys don't like Ford guys and Ford guys don't like Chevy guys. That is a joke that I feel is kind of lost amongst the younger generation specifically, because no one, first of all, it's not the same that it used to be. It's just not the same. So I just feel there's going to be a lot of jokes that fly over people's heads. And to me, that kind of pulls me out of the experience where I'm oh, once you get the joke, it's oh, okay, ha ha ha, you know. Honestly, there were times in this movie where it does get like unnecessarily dark to try and get its point across, and in some ways it feels like a family style movie, like a movie that would have been released like circa 2004 to like 2009, like very wholesome and like predictable. But I definitely wouldn't take my kids to see this one. Like, this is PG execution with PG-13 undertones for sure. Like, unless you want a lot of questions on the car ride home, which maybe you do, I wouldn't bring my kids to see this. I would say that this is like a pretty good date night movie, honestly, like especially if you actually really love the person you're with. Anyways, this weird balance of kind of like trying to make it wholesome but also making it really dark. It's a bit weird sometimes. Like, it doesn't always mesh. I feel like people saw like Jojo Rabbit and felt like they could tell something like that. I feel like lots of people have tried to do kind of that wholesome / comedy, like dark undertone thing. And this is a good example of why sometimes it's better to just be a little bit predictable, in my opinion. I'm not saying I disliked it, but there were times where I was like, good Lord, this is dark. So I just want to warn you about that before you go watch it. There were multiple times, too, where there's supposed to be, like, emphasis on drama. Like, there's supposed to be, you know, like, the scene changes. And, like, obviously, you could tell they were going for, like, a dramatic approach with what they're doing. And the music just does not match. Which, if that happens, like, you've lost me. Like, if I'm not emotionally invested, like, in the music specifically, like, if it's not adding to a scene, if it's making me question, like, why are they playing this song? Yeah, I think that can be a problem for sure. Another thing that was kind of weird about this movie is Tom Hanks is, man, he is a great actor. There's just no denying that he is a great actor. But in some of the scenes, especially towards the beginning of the movie, it really felt like he was overacting and not in a good way. Now, there are many reasons why Tom Hanks is the way he is in this movie, and it kind of does elaborate on that. But still, there were moments where I was like, man, I don't know how I feel about the first 30 to 45 minutes in this movie. It feels like he's trying so hard to be like a caricature of a old person, like a grumpy old person. Like, he's not just a grumpy old person doing his thing. He's like a caricature, over dramatized one. And sometimes that works for me. Most of the time it doesn't. I really love the family that moves in. Like, without talking too much about their plot, but again, like, there's just some weirdness that I feel like maybe different generations are going to, like, I don't know, relate to. But it's almost like this movie decided to take how older generations view pretty much anyone that's younger than them, like, and make them look like idiots no matter what. And I feel like that's something that this movie really tries to just, like, beat you in the head with over and over again. Like, that's what they're trying to get across. And by the end of it, it's just kind of like, okay, I get it. There's more emphasis on, like, the hammer beating than, like, the resolution of the positivity, you know, the positive things that are going to happen. It's about 20 minutes too long. I feel like you could have had, like, a solid hour and 30-minute movie here. But it does drag on a bit, in my opinion, and some scenes for too long. After saying all of that, though, like, trying to be as objective as possible, I did really like it. Like, I felt something multiple times in this movie, and it's definitely, like, a movie I would totally watch again. And it's a fun movie to watch with people that maybe have never watched a movie like that before, where you really have to, like, this movie begs to be watched. I had to pee, and, like, within 5 minutes, like, a major plot point had passed on. So that's why I say it's, like, tough to talk about this movie without revealing too much of what's happening. But overall, I enjoyed it, and I'll probably go watch it again, honestly, or at least rent it or buy it digitally. Like, I enjoyed it enough to purchase it. Let's put it that way. All right, I've talked enough for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is my review of A Man Called Otto. I don't do scores here anymore. I don't really like doing that. I liked it. I think you should go watch it. So if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Well, once again, thank you so much for showing up today. I really, really appreciate it. Again, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. I know that's the thing that all the YouTubers do. Everyone's asking to sub. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and who knows, you might even see a video every now and then that you actually like. or maybe interested in. Not only that, I do a bunch of stuff, so make sure you check all the information down in the description down below. We got podcasts, we got Let's Plays, we got all kinds of stuff for all kinds of fandoms. So make sure you check that out. I would seriously appreciate it, and I would love to see you around here more. I am Gabriel Fast. I will always be the Wannabe Critic.